Okay, boys and girls. You just probably watched my bacteria video, and we talked about bacteria an awful lot when we went over the human body. We talked an awful lot about what they were, what they did, how they moved, things along those lines. Now we're going to talk about viruses. Okay, viruses are a little different. Um, I've really been trying to brush up on my virus talk, even though it's not going to be on your integrated test, um, since the events that have unfolded around us are going on, I figure I would go ahead and talk to you about viruses. Um, Viruses are just as old as bacteria, from what they say. They've been here since the dawn of man. Uh, this is kind of a crazy thing to think about. We know that bacteria are single celled organisms. Viruses are even smaller than bacteria are. Okay, bacteria evidently are larger, a lot larger than these viruses. Viruses can fit on top of bacteria, so they're very, very small. Okay, um, now with the coronavirus, there are obviously various ways in which they move, but let's just talk about some of the characteristics of a virus. Okay, so we said they were smaller than bacteria. Now, I've been doing a lot of reading online, and for the most part, viruses are non living. They are not alive. They don't have a single cell in them. And remember, a cell is the smallest part of any living organism. And we've talked about that a lot in school, a whole lot. We talked about us being multicellular, single celled organisms. They can carry out their whole entire life the same things we pretty much do. They can eat, they can move around, they can replicate, and they can go to the bathroom. Those are life's processes. Viruses don't do that. Bacteria can live on their own. There's bacteria all over your house sitting there living right now, and they're not having to do anything special in order to survive. Viruses are very, very different. Viruses have to have a host. Now, when I tell you it's a host, what a host is something that's alive. So there are viruses out there that actually attack bacteria. That's how small they really are. Now, there's been some discrepancy from the things that I've read, and I'm going to tell you what a virus does and why some people think they're alive and some people don't think they're alive. For the most part, they're dead, but some people give them living characteristics. So let me just give you an example. Let's talk about just a cell in your body. Let's say that we talk about one of your throat cells. All right, let's say your throat cell is circular, and one day you're walking down the street, someone with a virus has touched something, and you go and you touch it, and you scratch your eye or you lick your finger, and that virus goes inside of you. Well, now the virus has got everything it needs to become more potent. It's got a host. You're the host. You're the one that's going to sit here and host this virus. So basically, you're the one that's going to take the virus in and give it a place to live. So the virus, let's say this is the virus, this funky looking thing. I would definitely go and check out some of the viruses online and just look at how strange they look compared to bacteria. It is absolutely amazing. So let's say this one virus that you got from that piece of stainless steel got into your throat. And what it does is it's going to come up to this cell and it's going to attach itself to it. Okay? And it's going to attach itself to it, and all the while it is going to inject something in there, and it's going to start making copies of itself. Okay? And it starts to make all these copies, and then eventually the cell gets so big and full of these copies that it just busts. And all these infected cells get put all through your body. And then obviously with the blood moving around, they get sent all over your body. So that's how these viruses spread. Once they get into a host, they can spread at a very, very fantastic rate, because those that bust out of this cell, the copies, go to other cells and they start to infect the other cells. So all these cells in your body start to explode with this virus, and then you get super duper sick. Another thing that these cells can do is that they can mutate. And mutation in a cell basically means that they can change the way they look. We've talked a lot about the flu virus in our school and in our class. When I tell you that if you go and you get a flu shot, it's not 100% chance, it's not 100% done deal that you're not going to get the flu. There's a lot of different mutations of the flu virus out there. I think a few years ago they were saying there was 5 different mutations of the flu strain, and that's why everybody got the flu for the most part that year, is because of all these mutations. And they try to make a vaccine for them, but it's really hard to understand when they mutate without giving any sort of kind of notice that they're going to do it, because it's nature, okay? So that's why some people think they consider them living. But this is what separates them from bacteria in a lot of ways. We told you, well, I told you, that bacteria reproduce. They grow and they divide. They go through something called meiosis and mitosis, all right? So they grow and they divide, and they don't need any kind of help on this. Viruses do not do that. They just sit there. Now, once they get in and they get in a host cell, then they can start to replicate, but they need to have something alive in order to get to it, all right? They just can't sit there and replicate without being in something that's living. They do not live on their own. Bacteria can live on their own, okay? So that's another one. And they take over your cells. Bacteria don't really take over your cells. They're just bacteria inside of you. So these right here are some of the viruses you've probably heard of. Obviously, the top one, Ebola, was a very popular one a few years ago. Ebola came from West Africa. It came from eating a diseased bat, from what they say. Now, all of these are speculative. I've read about all these, and they're not 100% sure where all these things come from, but these are good ideas. Now, these next 4, measles, polio, the mumps, and rubella, are all viruses, and I'm almost certain that when you're born, you are given a vaccine for these so that you don't get them in the future. And that's one thing that's so scary about a virus, is that in order to fight a virus, you have to have a vaccine for it, which is a little different than when you have strep throat. If you have strep throat is a bacteria, comes from the cocci family of the bacteria. You can kill all your bacteria in your stomach with antibiotics, and eventually the strep throat will go away. Viruses are a lot different. You can't take a pill. You have to have a vaccine. So with all of these, polio, horrible disease that would cripple you, they found a vaccine for you. So polio is not really around anymore. I think very few cases ever come up. The measles, you got to have that before you get into school. You got to have the mumps vaccination and the rubella in order to even get in school, so that you don't spread it if you do have it. But they are vaccines made for these. Now, this next one I'm going to show you, this is not a very good drawing of the coronavirus. I did the best I could. But the coronavirus is a circular virus. It looks very similar to the flu. If you were to look up the flu, the ends of it is a little different. On your assignment, I'm going to get you to look at these 2 right here. These right here, SARS and MERS. I want you to look those up, and I'm going to give you the assignment. I'm going to make sure that you know what these 2 are, because these are also types of coronaviruses, and these do not have vaccines as well. The coronavirus obviously does not have a vaccine. That's why everyone's taking all these precautions in order for us not to try to get it. If there's not a vaccine for it, then you are open and susceptible to getting it. And from the understanding I have about the coronavirus is that even though they can't move on their own, it can live a long time on certain surfaces. So you got to be really careful. You got to be vigilant in the way that you're washing your hands, keeping your hands away from your face, using hand sanitizer, those things to try to kill the virus if it does get on your hands. All right, and also it can, if you see someone sneezing, if you go through their water vapor that comes out of their nose and their mouth and you sniff it up, then the virus has got a host to start to multiply in, and you could possibly get sick from it. So that's going to be on the assignment. I haven't given it yet. I just wanted to give you a little background on viruses. All right, definitely not as good at viruses as I am at bacteria. I talked about bacteria a lot. Now this right here, I'm also going to put on the assignment. This right here is a very, very interesting virus, and I have spelled it down here at the bottom. It says I believe you call it a bacteriophage. Bacteriophage. And on your assignment, I am going to get you to go and tell me what this virus does. Very, very, very interesting. It'll be some background knowledge you can look at and understand what we're talking about when you go and you look up bacteriophage. It's kind of interesting. I felt it very fascinating. But I hope that this helped you out a little bit. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to inform you as to how these things are different. You got to be really careful with the coronavirus because, like I told you, there is no vaccine for it yet. I'm sure they're working on one right now so that we can go about our daily lives without having to worry about getting some kind of acute respiratory syndrome. So they are in the process of doing it as we speak, and it takes a while to get a vaccine. It's not going to be tomorrow or next week. It's going to be months from now when we will have the ability to start to be vaccinated against these corona-type viruses. But I hope this helped you out a lot, and I'm going to give you your assignment in just a second. And listen, I need some feedback. Is this not informative? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Is the assignment too long? Is it too short? Is it not challenging? All these things would be very helpful for me in the future when I start assigning work to you guys. So I hope you guys have a good day, and this will be going live on Wednesday, okay? Well, have a good one.